listening to TMZ Movie Crashers.
Welcome back to TMZ's Movie Crashers. I'm your host, Fabian Garcia from TMZ.
I'm your host, Paige Catton from TooFab.
Lots of movie news. Let's
Yes.
quickly go through what we're not going to talk about at length today, including the fact that Billy Eichner is very upset about Bros, his gay rom-com, bombing at the box office. He seems to be blaming homophobia and straight people for, quote, not coming out. I think that's kind of a bad take, but whatever. That's his opinion.
Yeah.
There's a new Wakanda Forever trailer that just dropped, and Shuri, Letitia Wright, seems to be getting confirmed as the new Black Panther.
Yep.
They showed her in her costume. That's very exciting. Hugh Jackman reprising his role as Wolverine in the new Deadpool
very
movie.
excited about that.
Marvel people are very, very stoked about that. What else? Lindsay Lohan. She is coming back to acting finally, coming back to movies. There's a holiday movie, at least I think a couple holiday movies coming out through Netflix. One is called Falling for Christmas. I think it hits streaming November sometime, and I think the poster and maybe even the first looks of it surfaced this week.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy about that, actually. I love Lindsay Lohan.
Me too.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that. And then lastly, Velma of Scooby-Doo fame. There's a new animated film that just got released, I think, through HBO Max or something. And she has been finally confirmed through canon that she is, in fact, a lesbian. She's gay. So there you go. We're not going to talk about that stuff at length, and I know there's a lot more. But
there was a lot.
There was, but we got to just jump right into it with the big motion picture. This is our biggest movie segment of the show, and we got to talk about Blonde. Blonde, which is the new Netflix movie starring Ana de Armas playing Marilyn Monroe, came out this past week. And there's so much to say about it, so much controversy. Frankly, it's getting destroyed by critics and by even just normies.
Yeah.
People do not like
Yet
this
it's still number one on Netflix.
Yeah, I mean, I got that
But people watched it.
Yeah, and even when people say it's number one on Netflix, I don't even know what that means, frankly. Like, it's like, who cares if it's number one in-house? Like, where are you getting your money? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really matter to me.
I don't know how that works,
The Netflix numbers mean nothing to me, frankly. But anyway, let's talk about it. We're gonna get into the controversy in a second, but let's actually just talk about the movie real quick. It's long. It's like 2 hours and 47 minutes, I believe.
It's almost 3 hours.
And I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I had to split it up over the course of 2 days because it was just, I couldn't sit through all of it in one sitting. Not so much because of the content was difficult to watch. I know some people are saying that it is. Some of the content for some might be difficult to watch, and maybe objectively it is. But for me, it wasn't so much that. It was just the fact that it dragged and it dragged. And my biggest gripe is that it is incoherent. It's an incoherent movie. There's not, it's very, remember when Andrew Dominik said, the director said, oh, this is going to be the Citizen Kane of Marilyn Monroe's life. Remember that? We talked about that like weeks ago or maybe months ago at this point.
It was months ago.
It was months ago. And I
ago.
understand exactly what he's saying, because if you've seen Citizen Kane, you know that it basically follows, significant chapters of this guy's life, right? Like his rise to fame and this and that. And it kind of shows you snapshots of his life. Played out in scenes and whatever. But Citizen Kane had more of a through line. There was a thread connecting the whole thing. There was a bit more of a cohesive, coherent plot. Yeah. That was missing in Blonde for me. I was just like, what's happening? It's jumping from here to there. Like we talked about earlier, that sometimes it shows years and dates.
Sometimes it doesn't.
Other times it doesn't.
Like, what time is it? What year is
Right.
it?
And also, like, I gotta say, going back to Ana de Armas and her accent, it was there throughout the entire movie. Sometimes it came through quite clearly for me. Other times she was hiding it somewhat well, but it was there, and that took me out of it. I couldn't really buy it. I was just like, what? Again, my grievance with that is that, to me, it's just silly to depict Marilyn Monroe as a Latin woman. It's just silly and absurd, but whatever, they rolled with it. Ana de Armas, to her credit, I will say she looked the part. Yeah. And I could tell that she was trying her best, trying to give a good performance. There were flashes of good performance in there, of her being emotional and everything else. For sure. And I'll give her credit there, but like, just a bad movie. Just a long, dragging, bad movie. And this is without even the controversial stuff.
Which
we're
going to get into.
And that's really all my takeaway on it. I don't have too much more to say about it, other than that it was really, really bad and boring. I know you might have some more thoughts. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, so I had a similar reaction. And I don't use the word hate. I don't use the word hate often, but I hated this. Yeah. And I don't think I can't tell you the last time I actively hated it.
Damn.
Before I even started watching it, I was dreading it. And even though I hadn't I really tried not to read too much of like reviews and stuff. I kind of save things and articles to read after.
There's a lot of bad buzz.
But just a little bit that I did see, I was like, oh my God, I'm dreading this. And I'm like, sorry, go ahead.
The buzzwords that people were using to describe the movie was misogynistic.
Yeah, those are some of the things I was going to say.
Sexist, glorifying rape, glorifying abuse. And kind of the key takeaway from critics of this movie is that it really leans in. It's almost not torture porn per se, but like abuse porn, or you know what I mean. That's kind of that's sort of what people are saying.
Yeah,
about this movie.
it was exploitative. It was sexist, as you said. It's dehumanizing, and it fetishes female pain, which is something that a lot of people were saying and critics were saying as well. It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
Yeah, and I agree with that too.
I think it was over sexualized. Ana Armas was topless for like 3/4 of the movie.
She was showing.
Like, oh, she's topless again. Oh, she's topless again.
She was showing off her full nude body a lot.
Yes, like it was like every other scene. I felt like
it was.
It also, you kind of mentioned some of the buzzwords that I was going to mention, and I agree with all of that. And I'm glad. One thing I am glad that it was on streaming, because I was glad that I was able to take breaks and pause and watch it in my bed and not have to watch it in a theater, because I don't think I would have lasted 3 hours in a theater.
Agreed. And not to interrupt you, but I think this is a type of movie, frankly, that would have warranted some walkouts, or it would have spurred some actual.
I would have walked out.
Yeah, some people would have walked out of this movie in the theater for sure.
Handled it in a theater,
right?
And ultimately, it's just trashes on Marilyn Monroe's legacy. Paints her as ditzy and stupid and almost porn star-ish. One scene that really stood out to me that I wanted to note is when it's a scene in the kitchen, and she's like asking about there's an egg, and she goes, "Do you eat this?" Like, she's not stupid. And Marilyn Monroe, one of her last words, she says, "I don't want to be made as a joke." And so much of this stuff, she's literally being mocked in this film.
It's a bit of a caricature depiction of her, and you're right, the stupid blonde. She is played as stupid in the movie. She's played as also seemingly mentally ill.
Yes,
as not just bipolar, but as if she's schizophrenic, as if she has two personalities. Because that's kind of the whole theme of the movie. That basically Marilyn Monroe, this is true. Marilyn Monroe is a stage name.
Yeah,
Marilyn Monroe is a alter ego, right? And maybe some of that, there's some truth in that, but the way they kind of played it in the movie is that Norma Jean, who's the real Marilyn Monroe, that's her real name, is that she's completely different from Marilyn Monroe, but in order to tap into the star of Marilyn Monroe, it's played as it's creepy, it's kind of crazy. She's begging the mirror for Marilyn to come in as if it's a spirit or something to possess her, and it's bizarre, right?
Yeah, and speaking of bizarre, another storyline that we're going to talk about some of the really disturbing stuff, but one thing I did want to note as well is the whole absent father storyline. She's basically reaching out for her father, and she wants to meet her father. God, I cannot talk today. And basically it was disgusting because it happened. This came through in all of her relationships to the point
she called all the guys
her daddy.
She called everybody daddy. All the men that she was involved with.
It was so disgusting.
Daddy.
I took notes while I was watching this.
Which, by the way, I don't even know if that's even true. If that's just a liberty that he took, or if that's part of the novel that it's based on. I have no idea.
I don't know, and I don't even.
But yeah, it was the personification of quote daddy issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I took notes on my phone while I was watching this movie, and I literally had in all caps at one point, "Why does she keep calling her husband's daddy?"
Yeah.
And it happened throughout the film, and it was so gross. Another thing that I did not like was how it changed from black and white to color. And
I didn't like that either.
Randomly, there was nothing. At first I was like, oh, okay, it's when she's going from Norma Jean to Marilyn. No, it just happened randomly.
You're right.
The whole changing the ratios was stupid as well.
That's true.
That was just giving me a headache. I was like, what is happening? Why are we going from small to big? And then it's
widescreen, full screen. What's happening?
Yes, and I was like, is my TV? Am I in the wrong setting or something?
I did not even notice that, but now that you mention it, I did observe that. I was like, wait, what's going on? The image looks a little different now. You're right. It's another element.
It was everything. I just hate it. I mean, the only thing that I think was
technically it was bad.
Yes,
script-wise, it was bad.
It was just
the acting was okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say the acting was
the
decent.
acting might have been the best thing about the movie.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think Ana did a decent job. I agree that the accent was very apparent, but she did have some great emotional scenes in there.
Sure,
but I just couldn't get over what was happening in the scenes and what she was doing and what was being done to her that I couldn't even focus on the actual acting. It was just so. It was frankly I texted you this. I was like, I felt physically ill during some parts of this movie.
And that's a great segue. Speaking of what was happening to her, basically, as I kind of mentioned, Ana Armas and Marilyn Monroe in this movie, the whole movie is basically just showing that, look, people abused her, people abused her, people abused her, people abused her. That's they're hammering that point home in every single scene
from beginning to end.
Yeah, and they basically, and this kind of leads into some of the controversy, including the fact that Planned Parenthood has come out and blasted this movie as, quote, anti-abortion / pro-life, right? As like propaganda is what the term they used. And I can kind of see that because Marilyn Monroe is depicted in this film as being pregnant 3 different times and losing her babies 3 different times, which is in fact based on reality. She was based on reports, and I guess it's been confirmed and well documented that she was in fact pregnant 3 different times. She miscarried 3 different times. 2 of the miscarriages, the circumstances of her miscarriages are not known. The details of that are not known. One of her pregnancies was a
ectopic pregnancy.
There we go, which means that the baby's born outside of the womb and it has to be aborted in order to save the mother. So I guess one of those pregnancies, did in fact result in an actual abortion because it needed to, right? In the movie, and look, I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, you have to assume if Marilyn Monroe was getting pregnant 3 different times, I assume that she wanted to be a mother. And in the movie, it's depicted that way too, that Marilyn Monroe really wants children. But 2 of her pregnancies are depicted in abortions. Because in the movie, so in very graphic terms, when we
say graphic, like there is it literally in the hospital room.
Yes, basically,
there is a viewpoint inside her uterus.
There's a shot where, so basically in the movie, in these nightmarish kind of sequences, that's how it's depicted. The 2 abortions that play out against her will, by the way, against her will. Because at first, like in the first abortion, she does sign on at first, but then as she's being taken to the hospital for the abortion, she's like, "No, I changed my mind. I don't want to do it.
Don't do it."
But they're taking her there anyway. You know, at the powers that be are taking her there.
They're giving her anesthetic.
Right.
They're
like
under.
doping her up and like holding her down. And one of those pregnancies, there's a shot from inside her vagina, basically, where the doctor's like opening it up. It's very disgusting.
And they hear like the vacuum.
Yeah, the vacuum and like the needle, everything. Yes. It's horrific. And then a lot of those scenes also play out with like fires breaking out and her escaping and just complete terror.
The dream sequences, you noted this earlier when we were talking about this, the dream sequences in the film were also very confusing because you're like, wait, what's happening? Is there really a fire? Like, because in the beginning there was a fire.
Yeah,
so.
there was a lot of weaving in between reality and dreams. You never really knew quite what was really happening. But yeah, so they depict 2 forced abortions on her, and then they also depict a miscarriage where she falls on her stomach and like basically ruptures her uterus and kills the fetus. And the fetus at least one of the fetuses, I don't know if it's 2, but at least one of the fetuses is also depicted as clearly talking to her in the movie, saying, I don't know if she hears it in her head or what, but
and they show this like CGI baby.
They show a CGI baby in her womb who looks pretty well formed. I don't know how pregnant she was in the movie or at that point, but the baby basically says, "Oh, mommy, are you gonna hurt me like you did last time?" She's like, "No, baby, I'm not." So
and that's before she has her miscarriage.
Yes.
So
basically, Planned Parenthood, in light of all these things, has come out and said, this movie is propaganda. It is anti-abortion propaganda. They're trying to shove some kind of message down your throat here.
Yeah.
We have a little bit of what the person said because it was actually pretty powerful.
So we have a little bit of their statement. So the rep said, Planned Parenthood respects artistic license and freedom. However, false images only serve to reinforce misinformation and perpetuate stigma around sexual reproductive health care. Every pregnancy outcome, especially abortion, should be portrayed sensitively, authentically, accurately in the media. It is a shame that the creators of Blonde chose to contribute to anti-abortion propaganda and stigmatize people's healthcare decisions instead.
Yes, and then after that, Andrew Dominik I don't know if he actually responded directly to that, but he had done an interview at least a week or 2 prior with the Wrap, I believe, addressing this controversy because it had already been bubbling before Planned Parenthood came out. And he came out with an interesting quote, and we're going to get more into Andrew Dominik in just a second here, but what did he have to say about it?
So he said, people are obviously concerned with losses of freedoms, but I mean, no one would give a shit about that if it'd been made in 2008, and probably no one's going to care about it in 4 years' time. And the movie won't have changed. It's just what's sort of going on. Yeah,
so basically he's saying that this is only top of mind right now because of Roe v. Wade, because it's like a hot button issue right now in the country, and he's basically saying it's not that big of a deal. It's, you know what I mean? He's kind of just brushing it off. Look, I got to be honest, and we're going to get into more Andrew Dominik stuff here in just a second, but I want to stay on this issue real quick. First of all, he sounds like a jackass.
100%.
There are other quotes that we're going to address in a second where he sounds like even more of a jackass, but just on this issue of the anti-abortion message, I kind of had mixed feelings because on the face of it, I could see where they're coming from based on the imagery that's depicted. They depict Marilyn Monroe as being forced through having to go through abortions in a forced kind of manner, right? Which is obviously terrible.
Yeah.
The move, whether it's based on reality, who knows? And like, here's the thing. Like, what I'll say is, first of all, there are 2 miscarriages, right? She's in real life, she is said to have been pregnant 3 different times.
Yeah.
And miscarried twice, and then had an abortion because of the
ectopic pregnancy procedure. Yeah.
So, but the circumstances around her miscarriage, I don't know the details of those. I don't know if anyone really knows the details of those, or if they're just hush hush. In my mind, though, I got to be honest, and like, I'm not trying to really defend the movie on this front, really, but like, let's just say, in my mind, Marilyn Monroe was like, she was kind of the property of the studio at the time, right? And I know that in reality, she had maybe more autonomy than Andrew Dominik is depicting in his film.
I mean,
hope
so.
But really, in reality, especially in those times, she was under contract by like Fox and different studios and stuff. And what I'm saying is, I wouldn't be surprised if her miscarriages were in fact just forced abortions. You know what I mean? And look, who knows? Like, I don't know if let's just run with the theory. This is obviously just a theory and speculation. But if there's a theory, or if there's any truth to this, the notion that Marilyn Monroe had to like give up her babies because at the will of the studio or at the will of other people besides her own, which in my mind is a total realistic possibility. It's a realistic possibility, especially for that time. She's under it's a big, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And let's just assume that there's any truth to that whatsoever. If there is in fact any truth to that whatsoever, then yes, I guess in that scenario, it is terrible. That's objectively a terrible thing. If someone is forced to have to go through something like that, then yeah, it's for and. So I don't understand Planned Parenthood's stance exactly. I mean, I guess they're saying it's propaganda, but if you're operating under the theory, and again, under this fictional theory that this person was forced to go through abortions, how could you come out against that? Like, yeah, this is an awful thing. Like, why can't, it's objectively an awful thing. Like, everyone can agree on that, right? Like, am I tripping? Like, No,
I understand where you're coming from. I do get what you're saying, but I think the way that with the imagery and the way that everything was alluded, it was like, I think the whole... When it comes to the pro-life argument, an anti-choice argument, it's that, you're killing a baby. Like, it is murder.
Right.
And they showed the fetus as a baby.
The baby's
with the
conscious.
The baby is a conscious. So
yes.
I think
that I agree with.
So
he took a lot of liberties with that.
That's 100% pro-life.
100%, for sure. Yeah.
So I think, but I agree what you're saying is we don't know if she actually, her miscarriages were abortions, if she was forced to get them.
No idea.
I think, I still feel like, it was not necessary.
To depict
I don't think it was necessary. I think it is very anti-choice. And it was so graphic. Like, it was just so graphic. And I don't know. It just made me, I mean, we're going to get more into Andrew Dominik in a second, but it's just like, he clearly hates women. And I'm just going to.
Oh, for sure.
Just going to state that.
So that's actually a great segue too. So those are the points on that, on the pro-life stuff, anti-abortion stuff. But then on the hating of women things, let's talk about that, because Andrew Dominik has been doing a lot of press in the lead up to this movie.
It's not helping the film at all.
No, not helping the film at all, putting his foot in his mouth. He's just not a well-spoken man, and just kind of a bit of a rube, and just a bit of a chauvinistic kind of guy. That's kind of how he comes off.
Yeah.
There's a quote that he gave. He gave an interview to an outlet.
Yeah.
What's the outlet called?
It was Sight and Sound magazine.
Sight and Sound magazine.
Yeah.
And he did an interview kind of talking about the movie. It's the full interview, but there was a section of the interview that went viral last week.
It was actually an outtake.
What does that mean exactly?
So
it's still part of the interview, obviously.
Well, it wasn't published in the interview.
Oh, interesting.
So the writer, I have her name, Christina Newland, had tweeted it.
So
it wasn't in the published
article. So they excluded it from the actual published article.
Which I thought, so basically,
but she said, by the way, here's another thing he said that I kind of kept off the piece. Wow.
Exactly. So basically, I forgot what the exact question was, but I don't even know if they included the question, but he appears shocked that people watch Marilyn Monroe movies.
Yes, because the interviewer is like talking about her movies and the fact that she started her own production company and things like that.
So, and I'll get back to that part in a sec, but in the outtake, he says that he hasn't seen Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Right, which is one of her famous movies.
One of her famous movies. And the writer, the journalist did clarify that he has seen other Marilyn Monroe films, but he hasn't seen that one.
Right.
And so like he literally is like, oh, really? You watch it? Like, what's it about? About Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. And then she's like describing it, and then he's like, oh, so they're like, like well-dressed whores.
That's literally the quote.
Literally well-dressed.
They're, quote, well-dressed whores.
That was the quote.
Yeah, and he basically, so in saying that, he is suggesting that Marilyn Monroe, at least in this film, was a quote well-dressed whore.
Yeah.
And if you watch the movie, I think that thought of her being a whore extends. I think Andrew Dominik perceives Marilyn Monroe as a whore who was being a whore because of situations or circumstances outside of her control, but a whore nonetheless. That's how he perceives Marilyn Monroe. And there's a lot of she's in the movie. She does. She blows JFK in the movie. Like, there's a shot where she's like literally blowing him,
and it goes on,
and it goes on, and like it's the point of view of the camera's like right on her face as she's like doing the oral sex. So it's very disturbing. And so I don't know, but go on. What else did you have to say?
So one of the other parts that really stood out to me, that really, when I say stood out, I mean really bothered me, is and it really seems that the journalist is a fan of Marilyn Monroe and knows a lot about her legacy and about her history,
which
like
is
a lot
totally
of people know.
Right.
Yeah,
she's a Hollywood icon.
Exactly,
and she's actually really revered as one of the great actresses. I know Marilyn Monroe is known as a sex icon, a sex symbol, and all this type of stuff, and all her relationships in her personal life. But on screen, she was actually good. She was revered as a solid actress at the time. At least in hindsight, that's what people
exactly.
Look
but
back
at one point, the journalist asks Andrew Dominik about, why did he include stuff about like her legacy, like, her production company, she opposed anti-communist witch hunts, she fought against segregation, etc.
Yes, she was seen by some as sympathetic to communism. So she was like politically active a little bit, she ran in some certain circles and things.
Yeah, and she like fought against segregation for like Ella Fitzgerald and all this stuff.
Yes.
And Andrew Dominik, I'm not going to read the whole quote, but he basically is like, that stuff is not really what the film is about. It's about a person who is going to kill themselves. It's not really looking at her lasting legacy. And he was saying like all this stuff about, she's rich, she's beautiful, look at her Instagram version of her life, she's got it all, and she killed herself. Now, to me, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and also on that note, they also another thing that's causing outrage with this movie is the fact that they actually filmed at the exact location where Marilyn Monroe really died, her house here in LA, the famous house here. They filmed in the room where she died.
The death scene.
The death scene where Armas is like laying dead on the bed after ODing, essentially. That's where Marilyn Monroe really did, in fact, die. And people said that was incredibly disrespectful to film
not
it there.
To curse, but that was fucked up.
Yes, it was. And
just plain and simple.
There were some quotes even floating around in the press of this movie where Ana de Armas was saying something to the effect of like, oh, we felt her spirit, we felt her ghost.
Andrew Dominik's like, it was a seance.
Yeah, seance, like haunting the set. And I wrote those off at the time as silly, but in light of this, maybe there was in fact a spirit walking around. Who knows? Maybe I don't know. But like I got to say, the last thoughts I want to make about this, and you can give your last thoughts too, obviously, but the last thought I want to make about this is that this movie was just bad. It was a bad project. It was a bad idea, bad execution, drew way too much controversy for no real reason whatsoever. For reason, obviously, but like unnecessary controversy.
Like this does not need to be made. There was no reason for this to be made.
And I got to say, shame on Brad Pitt, first of all. Brad Pitt and his Plan B production company are behind this movie. He's listed as an EP in this movie. I don't know what, and I know he loves Andrew Dominik. He's worked with him for 2 movies, the assassination of Jesse James by the coward, whatever, and then the Killing Them Softly movie, which are good films, objectively good films. So I understand Brad Pitt's affinity for Andrew Dominik as a director, but in this particular instance, bad judgment on Brad Pitt. And I got to say, like, all the other actors involved, including Ana de Armas, this is a stain on her, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Big stain on her, big mistake on her part. I think she thought Andrew Dominik had good intentions here and was trying to do a powerful...
He worked on this project for like 10 years.
Yeah, I think she thought he was trying to do something powerful and meaningful with something really to say. But the message that I picked up was that you hate women.
And that most people.
You hate women. You hate Marilyn Monroe. You just want to show her being fucking torn apart, which is disgusting, frankly. Nobody wants to see that. You know what I mean? Especially like an NC-17 version. There's a lot of sex in this movie. It's pretty graphic. I think this is bad on Ana de Armas and Adrian Brody and everybody else that worked on it. And it's just a shame, really. It's not a good one. What are your last thoughts on this?
My last thoughts, honestly, I agree with you. Like the word disgusting, I kept writing that on my notes. Disgusting, absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
And I agree. He obviously hates women. He hates Marilyn Monroe specifically. And one thing about his responses in these interviews, like, is he dumb and just tone deaf?
Yeah,
and he doesn't realize people would have issues with this film,
or is he just overly defensive?
Doesn't care, or he doesn't care.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both.
Honestly, if it's the latter, like if he really just doesn't care, I think that's more concerning because I
agree.
Like, you should care, especially like if you want people to like watch your future
should care,
films.
Right, you should care how you're being perceived. Like that stuff matters.
Especially when these very disturbing, serious issues are addressed in this film and people are really upset about it. Like, this is
like, if you want to defend your movie, that's one thing, but defend it thoughtfully.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not with these like screw these people.
Yeah.
They
she
don't
killed
like
herself.
Tough
They're
luck.
whores. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Honestly, we usually, I feel like we often say, I don't know how you feel this way. We usually say like, oh yeah, like still see it. But honestly, don't watch this movie.
I say skip it for sure. Skip this movie.
Watch something else.
Yep. And with that, we're going to move on to our next segment, which is actually just as, maybe not as quite compelling as Blonde was.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. So Will Smith is getting back into movies right off the bat. There's a new movie of his. By the way, this is the Hollywood Hoedown. We should say, yes, this is the Hollywood Hoedown. There we go. Excuse me.
Can't forget the
Will Smith, back in movies. His new film, his new Apple film, Emancipation. The trailer's been released. It has a release date for December. It's coming out.
Yep.
It's coming out
After
this
being
year.
delayed. Yep.
This after the Oscar slap, which was just earlier in March. And they say it was shelved and or delayed. I don't buy that one bit. I think it was already set to come out there.
Apple didn't say, they just were like, oh, we're not going to say when it's actually coming out.
Right. So who knows if it was actually shelved or not. I don't think it was shelved at all. The movie came out. Will Smith went to an event this weekend in D.C. for like the Congressional Black Caucus, and a lot of people from the NAACP were there. They screened the film. He made some remarks, basically saying why he chose this film and why it's powerful, et cetera, et cetera.
Not a typical slave story.
Exactly.
Et cetera.
We have those clips on our site. People can go see them, and it got a lot of rave reviews there from the people who watched it. And from the people who have seen it so far, they say it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's about that very famous it's a historical photo of a slave in the 1800s where he's like it's a photograph that was taken of him in his back, and he's got scars all over his back. I think there's like 2 or 3 of them from different angles they took. Yeah. But it's a very famous photo, and Will Smith says this himself. It was like the first viral photo of its day, which is 100% true. Yeah. And it actually kind of I think might have helped.
Peter is the name.
Whipped Peter is the name of the slave. I think he might have a real name actually.
I think it was Gordon
or something. Correct. But Will Smith is playing this man and kind of telling his story. And that photo actually kind of changed the course of history in America with the Civil War.
Because people really saw,
they
this is
saw
what's really
what was
happening.
The horrors of slavery, obviously.
The horrific things
Yes. And Will Smith in the trailer, I got to say, it looks damn good. It looks good. He's basically escaping from a plantation and trying to save his family and reunite with them. And
he like joins the Union Army.
Yes, joins the Union Army. It looks very dramatic. It looks well produced, well made. Will Smith and character and in costume, I got to say, he looks good. He looks good. He sounds good. And I got to say, my gut is telling me this is going to be an Oscar-worthy performance. So now the question.
This brings the big question.
This is the big question. Is it too soon? Is it too soon for Will Smith to be making a comeback with a role where he just on merit alone might in fact be considered for an Oscar? He might be considered to be nominated. And in my mind, I say it's not too soon. I say it's fine. I'm over the slap. I know it was a terrible thing he did, and I can say that all day, every day. I will never back down from that. He shouldn't have slapped Chris Rock. But at the same time, it's over. Chris Rock has also proven himself to be a jackass since then. Maybe Warren. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to advocate for violence. That's insane. But the point is, it's over. It's done with. He's received his punishment. It's going to be very interesting to me if Will Smith is in fact nominated for this role, because look, I'm able to separate the art from the artist, right? Okay. Always, even with Harvey Weinstein, as terrible of a human being as he is, Harvey Weinstein was a fantastic film producer and has made fantastic films, and I'll still stand by a lot of his films. I don't care, you know what I mean? I can separate the two. I've always been able to do that, and I can do the same thing with Will Smith too. If this role and this performance is in fact Oscar-worthy, nominate him for an Oscar. And let's just run with this theory. If he wins, fine, he wins. He doesn't have to go to the show. I know they make a big deal. Oh, being there is a big. I guess it is a big deal, but in hindsight, it doesn't matter. If he wins the Oscar, send someone up there to receive it. Make it a quick, brief speech or whatever. It's interesting. The Hollywood Reporter actually put out a story today. They spoke to dozens of Academy members, people who actually vote on this stuff. Very mixed bag response about
split.
how people feel. Some people say, yeah, like I'll watch it, and hey, if the performance is there and it is in fact deserving of a nomination, I'll vote for him. Why not? Yeah. Other people were saying, fuck Will Smith. We're not voting for him. I'm not over the slap, which to me is silly. It's like, well, come on, you're supposed to be doing your job. Like, it's just, to me, like, objectivity. I don't understand how anyone can deny that objectivity should be behind the vote. Should they not? Should the Oscar slap actually factor into people's decision? Like, that's insane to me that people are actually admitting that. And they're anonymous, by the way. They didn't go on the record, but they're basically admitting, yes, I'm going to think about the Oscar slap, and because of that, I'm not going to vote for this guy. It's like, what? Like, I don't know. Where do you land on it?
Okay, so I actually really disagree with you.
Okay,
so first of all, I want to note that I think it's very weird that Apple decided to add the film possible Oscar contender this late in the game. It
I
is
agree.
way too late in Oscar season to suddenly announce that there's going to be another.
But they still technically qualify.
Yes. It's still, but I think it's like if you want to generate buzz and you want to generate people to get excited about your film, to want to see your film, especially when it's with an actor who needs all of that good press.
Yeah.
It's too late in the game. I think it's going to be a detriment to the film's Oscar chances. In addition to, obviously, the big detriment is the fact that, of course, it stars Will Smith.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, it's too soon. I don't understand why they couldn't just wait another year. I think that there needs to be an Oscar season or an Oscar season in between.
Between the Will Smith incident?
Until the slap. And then I think that it would have done better. And he would have been
more well received, you're saying.
Exactly.
Yes,
and we're not even
waited.
sure, like, things are going to be, I might change my tune if he is nominated, if he does win, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, but we obviously have to see the movie too.
Exactly.
Right.
Of course. That's the first thing we have to do. But I just think that it's just, even if it's a great performance, and I agree that people need to be objective, I think it's going to be really hard for some Oscar voters to be objective for something like this. I think it's too fresh in their minds. And I mean, obviously...
Because you're right, not to interrupt you, but like it's almost like maybe some of them see it just to kind of play devil's advocate. Maybe some of them, the reason they're saying, no, I'm not going to vote for him, maybe because they think, what sort of message is that sending about, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what sort of message is it sending if I actually vote for this guy?
On the Oscars legacy, on like what the Academy is all about.
Right, literally like within a year of it happening.
Exactly.
It's like, what are we actually saying here? What are we endorsing?
Me personally, I would feel better if it was the following year. And I think
everybody would probably feel better.
I know. I
agree.
just don't understand why they had to have it come out now.
It's a very interesting choice.
And it's also weird.
And I'm also curious to see, was it purely Apple's decision or did Will Smith play a part in this?
And
Who
it's
knows?
also weird. I want to point
Will
out
Smith. Will
that
Smith's
he
Will Smith.
has basically disappeared.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And
He's
then
gone.
suddenly he just pops up and then now he has this movie. I think it's just bizarre, and I think they should have just waited. Should have just waited to next year. I don't understand why they had to have it come out this year, and I think it is going, and I might be eating my words later, but I think it's going to be a detriment to the film's Oscars chances.
It very well might.
Yeah.
If it is in fact considered for Oscar consideration because it's so good apparently, and if he is in fact nominated, man, that's going to be some juicy gossip we will talk about at the time when it happens. But I think we can leave it there.
Yeah.
And we can move on to our final segment. What'd you see?
Yes.
What'd you think?
What'd you see?
I saw Smile. And I'll just make this brief and quick because I know we're kind of running out of time here. But it was fantastic. It's the horror movie of the weekend. It took the #1 top spot at the box office. And for good reason. It was a good, fun time. It basically leans into a lot of jump scares, which is fine. It's like a typical like modern day horror movie where there's a lot of jump scares and very loud, and it kind of like that's what really scares you, the loudness of the jump scares. Like because like especially in theaters, those screams are like loud. You're like holy crap! So that's what really takes you back. But it was also creepy. I can admit it was pretty creepy. And the one thing that I'll kind of critique it on a little bit was even though it was fun, it was like a fun, good old fashioned Halloween movie. Some of the underlying themes are a little disturbing. Like they talk a lot about mental health and things like that. Are they kind of being a little too cavalier with that? Maybe that's possibly a critique. Also, there's a big suicide undertone. The whole movie is about basically these people that are going around killing themselves, being possessed by whatever it is. They basically are killing themselves in front of other people and then passing on that curse to that person.
Oh,
that's kind of the whole premise of it. And a lot of the suicides are very graphic.
Oh God.
Yeah, and so like. I was watching that, and I ended up going to see it with like my little cousins because one of my cousins is like really into like horror and Halloween and stuff.
Just like his uncle.
Yeah.
Just like his cousin.
But basically, I was like, I don't know, I like this messaging here. You know what I mean? And afterward, I actually had to make a point to tell them like, hey, I know they talked about suicide. That's actually not really anything to be really taken lightly. And I know this movie kind of did that by making it a horror movie. But that stuff is serious, and I kind of had to actually explain it to them in a serious way afterwards. Yeah. So that's my only really critique. But with that said, still a good time, still a fun time at the movies, just on the horror level. And that's pretty much it. I loved it. It was great. What'd you see?
Okay, so totally different film. I watched Hocus Pocus 2.
Still
on
Halloween
Disney
related, though.
Still Halloween related.
Yeah.
So first, I want to really quickly note, because again, we're running out of time here, but I do want to note that I have never been like a diehard Hocus Pocus fan, so
Right.
I need to
I've never
stress
actually
that.
even seen it.
I didn't see it till a few years ago, but actually
Okay.
came out the year I was born, 93.
Oh, nice.
So it came out the year I was born. I was always a Halloween Town girly. I still am.
Sure.
I watched Halloween Town like
It's considered a cult classic among the Halloween
So
crowd,
I didn't have that
yes.
emotional attachment to it like a
Right.
lot of people do.
Right.
But from someone, and I rewatched the first one right before I watched the second one,
Okay.
and honestly, I had a great time. It was cute. It was campy. It was fun. Really heartfelt.
Right.
The main three, the Sanderson
Is
sisters,
it scary
were great.
at all, or not really?
No, not really.
It's not a
No, I
scary
mean there's
movie.
like some creepy moments, kind of, but actually no, it's not even
It's
creepy.
it's just more campy
It's
than
kids.
anything.
Yeah, it's more campy.
Okay.
Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, Kathy Najimy were hilarious.
They all reprised their roles.
they reprised their roles. I like the new character, Sam Richardson. I know you've seen him in a lot of stuff. He was really funny. I didn't recognize the actor's name, but I know you've recognized his face.
Okay.
He's really funny in it. The new girl, Whitney Peak, one of the new characters, she's in Gossip Girl. She was great in it. And honestly, I think the best part of the film was the humor. It was actually genuinely funny.
Yeah.
Like, really one quick joke that was so funny is Kathy Najimy in the original film, I think she had like a vacuum or something as her broom, but she uses Roombas.
In
And
the new one?
Yes. Like one
Nice.
on each foot. And I thought that was so funny.
They updated things
They
a little
did,
bit.
but that was just hilarious. Like they do
Right.
like skincare, and it's just like so funny.
Nice.
But I have to say real quick, the main problem I had with it, because I know people that are big fans of the original like didn't love the sequel.
Oh,
Some
right,
people
right,
didn't. Because like they were talking about on the TMZ show today. Some people are like, "Oh, I loved it." Some people are like, "Oh, I hated it." So people that are very attached to the original
Kinda torn on
were
this.
more critical than I am, because again, I'm not as attached to it.
Right.
But the best part of the film, in addition to the humor, was Hannah Waddingham from Ted Lasso. She
was in there too?
like less than 5 minutes of screen time.
Wow.
And that's what I was so bummed
so it was
about.
like a cameo
yes,
then.
but
Okay.
she was so good. I'm like, I wanted more of her.
Yeah.
Because she was so good. And lastly, I want to note that Hocus Pocus 2 has officially become Disney Plus's biggest film debut to date.
I gotta say, like I know I kind of
It's fun.
I trashed the streaming movies a lot, but
Yeah.
I gotta say Disney Plus has something I think on their hands with like their full library, and they select certain releases for
Yeah.
Disney Plus, and it's paying off. It seems.
Yeah,
I think,
and
yes.
they really got the nostalgia. They really have that, so they can
Good.
They can really like people of all ages can find
Can
things. There's
enjoy
everything
it.
from like there's even National Geographic on
Right,
there.
right.
Disney Plus. This isn't an ad, but Disney
Yeah.
Plus.
Disney's killing it right now,
They have
kind
a
of.
lot. They're killing it.
Good for
They're
them.
killing it.
All right, guys. Well, we'll leave you there.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in with us. Check us out on Spotify, Apple, iHeart. We're on YouTube. We're on the website, and we will be with you again next week. So yeah, take it easy. We'll check in with you later.